In the heart of an ancient African village, nestled between the rolling hills and the fertile riverside, there was a village known as Embaro. The people of Embaro lived in harmony with nature, their lives deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the earth. In this village, where stories of love, family, and tradition were passed down from generation to generation, lived a woman named Sisi Zola. Sisi Zola was a woman of great wisdom. At 65 years old, she was one of the village elders, revered for her knowledge of the land, the spirits, and the ancient stories that had shaped the lives of the people. Her skin, dark as the rich soil, told tales of a life well lived. Her eyes, sharp and clear, had witnessed decades of change in her village, but her heart had remained unchanged, devoted to preserving the traditions of her people. Despite her age, Sisi Zola remained a striking figure. Her hair, now silver, was worn in a long braid that cascaded down her back, adorned with beads and charms that clinked softly as she walked. She wore the traditional attire of her people, a colorful kanga that wrapped around her waist, and a shawl made of woven cloth draped over her shoulders. Every movement of hers seemed to carry a sense of grace, an understanding of the world that was both profound and humble. But despite her wisdom, there was one thing Sisi Zola lacked: companionship. As the years passed, the weight of loneliness had settled in her heart, a quiet ache she did not speak of. Many young men had come to ask for her hand in marriage when she was younger, but each time she had refused, not out of pride or disdain, but because she had never felt a connection with any of them. In her heart, she knew that love was not something to be rushed, nor was it something that could be forced. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, a young man named Kwame walked into the village. Kwame was a traveler, a wanderer who had spent most of his life journeying through different lands, learning the ways of the world. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with skin the color of honey and eyes as dark as the night. His face was full of youthful determination, yet there was something in his gaze that suggested he had already seen much more of the world than his age would suggest. Kwame had come to Embaro seeking wisdom. He had heard of Sisi Zola's knowledge and hoped that she might help him understand the deeper mysteries of life. When he arrived at her humble hut, nestled on the outskirts of the village, he was greeted by the soft scent of herbs and the sounds of birds calling from the nearby trees. "Come in, young man," Sisi Zola called from inside her hut, her voice warm but firm. "I know you have questions, and I may have some answers." Kwame entered, his heart beating with anticipation. The hut was simple, filled with the aroma of burning incense and the soft glow of candlelight. Books and scrolls were stacked neatly on wooden shelves, each containing stories and lessons passed down through generations. "I have heard much about you, Sisi Zola," Kwame said, his voice respectful. "I have traveled far to seek your wisdom. Will you teach me the secrets of the world, the way you have taught so many others?" Sisi Zola smiled gently, her eyes crinkling with the wisdom of her years. "Wisdom is not something that can be taught, young man. It is something that must be lived. But I will share with you what I know, if you are willing to listen with an open heart." And so the two sat together, and Kwame listened intently as Sisi Zola shared her stories. Over the course of several weeks, they grew close, their bond deepening with each passing day. Kwame, who had always been a skeptic, began to see the world through a different lens. Sisi Zola's words resonated within him, touching something deep inside that he had never understood before. But as their friendship blossomed, so did something else, something neither of them could have foreseen. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Kwame spoke. "Sisi Zola, I have come to realize something that I have never understood before. I have traveled the world, seeking knowledge and wisdom, but it is here, with you, that I feel truly at home. Your words, your presence, have touched me in ways I cannot explain." Sisi Zola looked at him, her heart heavy with emotion. She had lived long enough to recognize when a person was speaking the truth, and she could see that Kwame's words were not just words. They were a revelation, a deep recognition of something sacred. "Kwame," she said softly, "I have lived a long life, and I have seen many As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. The village began to notice the closeness between Sisizola and Kwame. Some whispered that the old woman was too old for the young man, while others praised their connection, seeing in it a deep respect for one another. But Kwame and Sisizola did not let the village gossip affect them. They were content in their own world, a world where love and respect were the only truths that mattered. One day, as they sat on a hill overlooking the village, Kwame turned to her with a question that had been lingering in his heart for some time. "Sisizola," he said, his voice soft, "what does love truly mean?" Sisizola gazed at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip below the hills. "Love, Kwame," she said slowly, "is not just an emotion. It is a choice. It is a decision to see the soul of another, to connect with them on a level deeper than the physical. Love is not bound by age, or time, or circumstance. It is timeless." Kwame felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. In that moment, he understood. Love was not something that could be explained. It was something that had to be felt. As the days grew longer, so did the connection between Kwame and Sisizola. Their days were spent in deep conversation, sharing stories of their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. Though their love was still a quiet whisper between them, it was undeniable. The village, however, was beginning to take notice. One morning, as the sun broke through the heavy clouds and the birds began their songs, Kwame and Sisizola sat by the river, watching the water flow over the smooth stones. They had just finished another long day of sharing wisdom, with Kwame asking questions and Sisizola imparting her knowledge. It was during these quiet moments that they felt closest, as if the whole world had faded away, and there was only the two of them. "Kwame," Sisizola said, her voice soft, yet filled with an underlying sadness. "Do you ever wonder about the way the world sees us? Our bond, our connection, the way others look at us?" Kwame, who had grown used to Sisizola's wisdom, looked at her with understanding. He had often wondered about their connection, but he had never let the whispers of others cloud his thoughts. "I do," he said. "But I also know that what we have is something rare. It is not bound by age or by the judgments of others. It is something pure, something deep." Sisizola nodded, her heart filled with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. "In this village, there are traditions, and sometimes those traditions bind us to old ways of thinking. A young man like you and an old woman like me, it is not something the elders would approve of. They will talk, Kwame, and their words will not be kind." Kwame reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Let them talk, Sisizola. What they say does not matter. I have traveled the world, seen many things, but it is here with you that I have found peace. In your presence I feel seen, heard, and loved, and that is enough for me." Tears glistened in Sisizola's eyes as she looked at him. She had never expected to feel this way again. Love, in its purest form, had come to her at a time in her life when she had thought it was too late. Yet here was Kwame, a man of the world, seeking her wisdom, and in turn, giving her a gift she had not known she needed, the gift of companionship, of love. The days that followed were filled with moments of quiet joy and uncertainty. The village elders, aware of the growing closeness between the two, began to speak in hushed tones. They questioned whether it was appropriate for a young man to be so involved with an elder woman, particularly one with no family to support her. The whispers were sharp, the judgments harsh. One afternoon, as Kwame and Sisizola walked through the village market, they overheard a conversation that made their hearts heavy. "Have you seen Kwame and Sisizola together again?" one woman whispered to another. "What could he possibly see in her? She is so old, and he is a young man with so much life ahead of him. It is unnatural." "Perhaps he is looking for something that his peers cannot offer him," the second woman responded. "But still, there is no future in that. He is wasting his time." Kwame's face hardened at the words, but Sisi Zola's expression remained calm. She had heard the rumors before, but today they felt different, more personal. Let them speak, Kwame, she said, her voice steady. What they do not understand, they fear. Kwame squeezed her hand, his voice filled with both determination and tenderness. I will not let their words shake what we have, Sisi Zola. We know the truth of our hearts. But the truth of their hearts was not enough to silence the gossip. Soon the village elders called for a meeting, and both Kwame and Sisi Zola were summoned to attend. The day of the meeting arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. The elders gathered in the center of the village, seated around a large fire. The flames flickered in the early morning light, casting long shadows on the faces of the men and women who watched with expectant eyes. Kwame stood beside Sisi Zola, his heart racing as he looked at the faces around him. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was different. This was about the woman he had come to love, his mentor, his friend, and his equal. The chief elder, a man named Neze, stood up and raised his hand to silence the crowd. His voice was deep, authoritative, but there was a softness in his tone when he spoke to Sisi Zola. Sisi Zola, he began, you are one of our oldest and most respected elders. You have guided this village for many years, but now you have taken a young man into your heart. We must ask you, is this wise? Is this what our traditions allow? The villagers fell silent, waiting for her response. Sisi Zola stood tall, her eyes unwavering as she looked at the chief elder and then at the others. Wisdom is not bound by age, Nyazi, she said. I have lived many years, and in those years, I have learned that love cannot be dictated by the expectations of others. Love is a bond that transcends age, and if we allow ourselves to judge love based on superficial factors, we will lose what is most precious. There was a murmur in the crowd, some agreeing, others unsure. The chief elder's face was unreadable as he looked at her. But what of the future, Sisi Zola? Kwame is a young man with so much ahead of him. Can he truly see a future with you? Kwame stepped forward, his voice strong, echoing in the silence of the gathering. I do not need a future that others deem acceptable. I need a future with Sisi Zola, for she is the one who has shown me what it means to truly live. She is the one who sees me for who I am, not for the years on my skin. His words were met with stunned silence. The chief elder looked at him, his eyes narrowing as he weighed his response. Finally, he spoke. Love is powerful, Nyazi said slowly, his voice softening. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge. But remember, it is not only love that binds us. It is respect, and it is the courage to face the world together. Kwame and Sisi Zola exchanged a look, both knowing the weight of his words. This was not just a battle for their love. It was a challenge to the very fabric of their community. We will face it together, Kwame said, his voice steady and resolute. Our love will stand, not because it fits into tradition, but because it is real. The elders sat in silence for a moment before Nyazi nodded, signaling that the meeting was adjourned. The crowd slowly began to disperse, the murmurs of conversation continuing, but this time with a hint of acceptance. As the sun set over the village that evening, Kwame and Sisi Zola walked back to her hut, their hearts filled with both relief and uncertainty. But they knew one thing for sure. Love, no matter its shape or form, had the power to change everything. In the days that followed the elders' meeting, the village seemed to shift. The whispers were quieter, but they had not disappeared entirely. Yet, there was something different in the air, something that changed the way the people looked at Kwame and Sisi Zola. There was a subtle respect in the way they spoke to them, and the judgment that had once been so sharp had softened just a little. Kwame and Sisi Zola continued to spend their days together, growing even closer, their bond stronger than before. The world around them was changing, and though the path ahead was still uncertain, they had come to understand that their love was not just for them, it was a lesson for the village itself. One morning, As Kwame helped Sisizola gather herbs from the forest, she spoke to him of something that had been weighing on her heart. Kwame, she said softly, her hands gently brushing the leaves of the plants, I have lived a long life, but there are times when I feel the weight of my years. You are young, full of hope and ambition. I worry sometimes that my love will be a burden to you, that when I am gone, you will be left with nothing but memories. Kwame stopped and turned to face her. His heart ached at the thought of losing her, but he knew that their love was not something fleeting. It was something deep, something that would transcend time. Sisizola, he said, his voice filled with emotion, I do not fear the future because it is with you. I know that one day we will be apart, but the love we share will never die. It will live on in the stories I tell, in the wisdom you have given me, and in the way I carry you in my heart.